Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Woody's Power Barn. Today, we're back on this old H here, and like I said in the last video, I think we're going to blow some smoke. If you haven't checked out the previous two videos of me working on this, make sure to go ahead and check those out and subscribe if you're not already. First video, we tore the engine down and assessed all of our parts and ordered parts. Second video, we cleaned all the parts up that are going to be going back on the engine. And now today we're going to get it all reassembled. And then we're going to start off, get the liners, pistons in, and then we'll just start slowly working from the bottom up to get this thing running. So, yeah, here we go. I think we're going to go ahead and get started, get these liners put in. So, the best way, since these are a dry sleeve, just like this, we're going to just put a real light coat of oil on the outsides of these. And I wipe these down with a brake clean and a rag, and the counter bores up in the top of the block here. Wipe these out really good, make sure there's no debris or anything in there. And then I have a pine 2x4 that's going to help us drive these in. So I got a little bit of oil on a rag here. Just a real light coat. You don't want these all gooped up. Maybe a little more than that. Alright. So no driving necessary on that one. And I did put these in the freezer to help them shrink them a little bit. And I'm hoping they're all going to drop in like that. That'd be ideal. So I'll get these other three done. I got a splinter. Alright, those all went in really nicely. This number 2 here, we had to kind of beat him in a little bit, but there's nothing wrong with a good tight fit. Pun not intended. So, I think the next step, we'll get these pistons in. When you're doing this, I'm going to start with number 1 and 4. You want to make sure that the crankshaft is at bottom dead center when you go ahead to install these pistons, because when you put them in, you don't want the rod to smack on the crankshaft journal, and you could ding either one of them up. So let me get the pistons out and ready to go in, and we'll throw them in quick. So we got our pistons cleaned up and ready to go. I got the bearings in them already. We're going to put a little oil around the piston head here a little bit on the bearing, and then some inside on that piston pin for the wrist pin bushing. So now I want to clock these piston rings. I don't think there's any real reason to rhyme. Some guys say 180, blah, blah. Just make sure that the notches of the piston rings are not lined up. And like this oil control ring is a 3-piece ring. Just all those individual rings on that oil control ring, just make sure they're not lined up and you'll be just fine. Typically, when an engine's running, these rings are constantly rotating around the piston anyway, so they're gonna go where they want to go and be happy. So I just kind of put them wherever they want to go, where they don't line up with another one. Alright, and now this is number 4, and you can see the rod is different. Make sure you put this in the correct spot and that the rod is oriented the correct way. The manual states that they want the stamped number on the piston facing the camshaft, which is my side over here. So it's going to go in just like this. Then I use my piston ring compressor. Pretty sure this is an O'Reilly's special. And we'll do our other one. Alright, this is our number 1 rod journal. Take our protective wrap off of it. Then I just reached up, pulled the piston down, and seated onto the crankshaft. Looks good to me. Okay. Then we have our connecting rod cap. And here's our stamped number, the 1 for cylinder 1. That matches up with the other one, camshaft side. Little dribble of oil on the bearing. Then I put oil on the bolt threads and underneath the bolt head and the washers. Can't really see what I'm doing because the camera is directly where I would be. But there's these little washers with tabs that you bend over that kind of lock the bolt head in place, these things. And they like to spin on you. There. You want them on the outside of the rod. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. So we got our torque wrench set to 40 foot-pounds. There we go. I'll go ahead, get all the other 3 in, and then we'll catch back up. All the pistons are in. And then we go underneath. Everything's torqued down. You can see the retainer clips on the rod caps are all bent over. The main caps have the wire running through them to hold them together. I don't know why, I don't really think it does anything, but that's what factory wants. So, I think we're ready. I think I'm going to put the head studs in, and then set the head on. That way, just in case if we drop anything, the oil pan's not on yet, so we can at least get it back out. So we have 14 studs to put in. Out of those 14, 5 of them are longer than the rest. These 2 holes and these 3 middles, they all have washers that go with them. This one's for the throttle bracket, and these 3 are in the center of the head. There's kind of a sleeve pressed in it. So you want to make sure to get these 5 longer studs in those spots. I'm going to put them in first. When I go in with these, I run a tap down the top threads, but these bottom threads are actually slightly oversized, so they seat in these. I found that out because I ran a tap down the bottom of this one, and it would cut metal off, and I knew that that wasn't right. So this one threads right in, but the rest of these will snug up. Regardless, I'm going to put a bit of blue retaining compound on the threads, because all these except like 5 are through holes, meaning there's no bottom. These are open to the coolant passages, these are open to the oil, and that blue retaining compound will help keep that from wicking up into the threads or seeping and ruining the head gasket or anything like that. What I was doing with my scraper is I don't know an exact height of these studs, so I set a nut on top of the head, and then I just made a point on my scraper to reference on about how tall I want all the studs. It's not an exact science, but you want full thread engagement on the upper nut, but you also want enough stud in the block so you don't pull it out. Everything's cleaned up, we're ready to get the head on. final torque on these is 70 foot-pounds. So when I torque them, I'm going to start at 35. I'm going to work from the center, and I'm going to do a spiral and work my way out. There's no specific torque sequence for this engine. I'm sure there is somewhere, but it doesn't list it in the manual. Rule of thumb, start in the middle and work your way out. That's one torqued head. We're getting the oil pan put up. I always like to put a little dab of silicone right where the front cover and the rear housing meet up with the engine block. There's a seam right there, and the gasket doesn't always seal the greatest on that seam. Sometimes you can get a slow oil leak. So I just put a nice thin layer of RTV silicone right on that crease. Alright, that's good for me. I just have a little dab of anti-seize on these oil pan threads. And there we go, one torqued up oil pan. Well guys, I think the rest of this is the same stuff that you've already saw and pretty monotonous, so I might just go ahead and let the camera do the talking. before I go much further on this, I kind of want to explain how I did the valve adjust. So I'm sure there's a spot on the dampener with the timing mark that you can line up so you know where number one top dead center is, and then adjust the appropriate valves, rolled over. I prefer a simpler method for myself. I call it the sister cylinder method. Cylinders 1 and 4 and 2 and 3 are paired. So 2 and 3 are a pair and 1 and 4 are a pair, meaning they're moving. They're the exact same in the engine, but they're on the opposing strokes. So when one cylinder's firing, the other one's intaking and exhausting, basically. So my best thing to do is I just roll the engine over, and right now I have number 1 on what I call valve overlap. When you turn the engine over, the intake valve will be closing and the exhaust valve will be just starting to open, I believe. Or maybe it's actually the other way around. When the exhaust valve is closing slowly, the intake valve is going to start opening. And there's a point in there called valve overlap when the exhaust and the intake are going to be slightly open a bit. And that helps suck exhaust out and also bring clean fueled air in for the combustion cycle on your intake, your suck stroke. So I'll get a close up of that so you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. So I'm going to slowly roll the engine over, and you should be able to kind of see these overlapping. See right about there. This is the intake and this is the exhaust. So you can watch this intake come up, and the exhaust immediately starts going down. Right about here, both of these they're both tight now. So in return, we will be able to adjust number 6, because both of these have a little play, because now this one is going to be at top dead center compression, and vice versa. If we roll the engine over 1 full revolution right now, number 6 will be on sister cylinder, and these will both be tight, and then we can do number 1, because that will be on number 1, or that will be on top dead center compression stroke, and then we'll be able to adjust these to our spec. The book wants, I believe it's 11 or 17 thousandths, I'd have to double check, on both valves, but they want them done hot. Obviously it's not hot right now, so I just adjusted them up. Nice slight drag on them. I'll run it a while, and then I'll probably pull the cover off after a couple hours of run time when it's hot, go through, readjust and recheck all the valves. Got the coil wire unhooked. We got coolant. We got oil. We're gonna crank on this thing, see if we can't get a little oil pressure built up. Alright, we got some oil pressure. Let's see if we can get her started. Alright guys, we got the coil wire hooked back up for all the sparks. We have our fuel turned on with some nice yellow, good, not varnished at all fuel. We have the shortest, stubbiest, loudest straight pipe possible for maximum deafness. Let's see if we can get her started. Always double check your shifter. Man, I didn't expect it to fire up that easy and run pretty decent actually, for not touching the carburetor adjustments or anything at all. They were right where I had them before when the engine was all old and wore out. But wow, runs great. It's kind of a load off your shoulders finally hearing it start. You have good oil pressure, all that. You know, there's a lot of you know, you did the work right, but you know, stuff can happen. But no, super happy. Can't be sad about that. So awesome. All right, guys, pretty happy right now. It runs, not great. Got a dial in carburetor, but other than that, had a really successful day. Super happy to hear this thing run. See it has oil pressure. No giant leaks that I found yet. So that's awesome. I'm happy, very happy. This tractor has a lot of sentimental value to the owners of it. So I think the next step, we're gonna take this thing for a little spin, check it over really good, flush a little coolant through it, and then take her back down to the home farm. It's almost plowing and planting time. So I think they're kind of wanting to use it for that a little bit. Not a big farm. It's not a big tractor. But anyways, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you haven't already, go check out the other videos on this series of this tractor. I got a lot of good information on there and had a lot of really good feedback, so don't be afraid to leave some of your own. Alright guys, till next time.